Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernest Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. That time of year is here. It's the final week of the NFL regular season, and the NFL playoffs are right around the corner, and there's tons of drama. 20 teams are still in contention for the NFL playoffs. Obviously, a lot of those teams have already booked their spot. They're already in the playoffs no matter what happens. But I'm going to go over every single NFL playoff scenario among the teams that are still fighting for those wild card spots and trying to clinch the division to make the playoff, not the teams that we know are in no matter what. But I'm going to offer my likelihood of all these teams that are still on the fringes of the NFL playoff. This final week's going to be awesome, and I will have my preview and predictions coming up later this week. But with all the players that we're still not 100% sure whether they're going to be playing or not, want to get that information before I make my predictions. But these scenarios are going to be insane with 20 teams still alive for the playoffs, which is the most in the final week of the regular season since 2006. You know it's going to be some wild swings in the final week of the regular season based on all these results and some of these teams thinking they're going to be in, and then something happens that knocks them out. Obviously, the Detroit Lions, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Philadelphia Eagles are already in the NFL playoffs. Some results are going to definitely impact what seed that they're going to be, but they're already in the NFL playoffs. No worries there. But the Green Bay Packers, they're 8-8, and they'll clinch a playoff berth most easily with a win over the Chicago Bears. There are a number of other scenarios involving a Green Bay tie. The Packers also will clinch a playoff berth with losses by the Vikings and the Seahawks, plus a loss by either the Buccaneers or the Saints. They'll also clinch a 6 seed with a win, plus the Los Angeles Rams loss to the San Francisco 49ers. So the Green Bay Packers, they got easy sledding here. All they got to do is knock off the Chicago Bears. And in this game, they will be at home versus Chicago as well. And the Bears, they're already eliminated. Yes, there's always motivation to knock off your rival. And Justin Fields, he's been playing very well toward the end of this season. But I would say that the Green Bay Packers have a 70% chance to make the NFL playoffs. All they got to do is beat a team that they have a better record than. They're at home. And even if they lose, there's still a shot that they can get in if things bounce their way. And the Rams losing to the 49ers is definitely a possibility as well. So it'd be huge for them to get a 6 seed. So Green Bay has a solid shot to get a 6 seed, probably around a 55% chance, but a 70% chance to make the NFL playoffs. Got to clinch it if you are the Green Bay Packers. To move on to the Minnesota Vikings, they have a much tougher time to possibly make the playoffs. They blew their chances big time against the Green Bay Packers last week, losing that game. They'll clinch a playoff berth and the number 7 seed with a win, plus losses by both the Packers and the Seahawks, plus a loss by either the Bucs or the Saints. Their chances are very slim. I would say that they only have around a 20% chance to win because look at who Minnesota plays. They play the Detroit Lions. So that's going to be tough for them to even be able to win that game. And then they need more things to go their way. Losses by the Packers and the Seahawks. I don't think it's going to happen. I'll give the Vikings a less than 20% chance to make the playoffs. They should have won last week over the Packers. Then they could have got in. Then looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, them along with the Green Bay Packers, easy sledding. All they got to do to clinch an NFC South title and get the 4th seed in the NFL playoffs is beat the worst team in the NFL record-wise in the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers have a 2-14 record. The game is on the road for the Bucs, but still, Carolina has not shown a lot of life this year. They had a couple decent performances, but if you're the Bucs, that's all you got to do. You just got to win that game. Or they could tie, plus the Saints lose, or tie against the Atlanta Falcons. Tampa Bay will clinch a playoff berth in the number 7 seed with a tie. A Seattle Seahawks loss to the Arizona Cardinals, and a Packers loss/tie. So it's wild that they have some other options on whether they can get in or not. But the Bucs, they have a very favorable opportunity here to make the playoffs. I'm going to give them a 75% chance to do it. You just got to beat the Panthers and you are in. But if they blow it, it will be a very humiliating loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you got the New Orleans Saints. They're 8-8 and they still have a shot as well. They can clinch an NFC South title and a number 4 seed with a win over the Falcons plus a Bucs loss/tie, or the tie plus a Bucs loss. New Orleans will clinch a playoff berth and the number 7 seed with a win plus losses or ties by both the Packers and Seahawks, or with a tie plus losses by both the Packers and Seahawks. So the Saints, their situation is not as concrete as the Bucs. They need some things to go their way. You talk about the Packers, if they lose to the Bears, and then you have the Seattle Seahawks playing the Arizona Cardinals. That's not super likely that both those teams lose. The Bucs, they have to lose to the Carolina Panthers for the Saints to get in as well that way. So I would say the Saints have around a 30% chance to make the NFL playoffs. They definitely can beat the Atlanta Falcons because they're at home, but because they need a lot of other scenarios Buccaneers to get in. It's doable, but not as simple as it is for the Green Bay Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then looking at the Atlanta Falcons, they're 7-9. The Falcons will clinch the NFC South title and the number 4 seed with a win over the Saints and a Buccaneers loss to the Panthers. So their slate is very similar to the New Orleans Saints. They have to go on the road and knock off New Orleans, plus the Bucs need to lose to the Panthers. The Bucs losing to the Panthers would open the door for both of these teams, but the Panthers are the worst team in the NFL, so you would think that the Bucs would have a good shot to win. I'm going to say that the Falcons are around with the Saints. They have about a 30% chance to win, probably a little bit less, around a 25 to 30% chance, just because Atlanta is going on the road to face the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints are at home, so they have that advantage. The Rams, they're already in the playoffs. Then you got the Seattle Seahawks. They'll clinch a playoff berth and the number 7 seed with a win over the Arizona Cardinals, which is very doable, plus a Packers loss/tie, or with a tie plus losses by both the Packers or Bucs, or the tie plus a Packers loss and a Saints loss. The Packers are at home against the Chicago Bears, so that is a game that the Packers really need to win, but they could lose. In Seattle, they're playing the Arizona Cardinals, which is not a very tough opponent. I'm going to give the Seahawks around a 40% chance to make the NFL playoffs. Their game is very doable, but the fact that they need the Packers to lose or tie prevents them from having a better chance. It's not as good of a chance as the Packers or the Bucs, where all they got to do is win and they're in. If the Seahawks had that advantage of just being able to beat the Cardinals and they were in, I'd give them a much better chance. They still could get in, but their chances are around at 40%. Now to go over to the AFC, the Miami Dolphins, they're already in, but the Buffalo Bills, they have the absolute weirdest scenario here where they could possibly not get in. No one's really talking about the Bills because you just assume they're in. They're at 10-6. They're ahead of the pack, but they will be eliminated from playoff contention with a loss plus wins by the Texans, Jaguars, the Steelers, or the loss plus wins by the Colts, Jaguars, the Steelers. So they would need all of that to happen. The Bills do have a tough game against the Miami Dolphins, so this is a game that they really need to win, but because they need all of those other teams to win for the Bills to not make the playoffs, I'm going to give the Bills around an 80% chance to make the NFL playoffs. They should make the playoffs, but you never know. Weirder things have happened. And the Texans, they do play the Indianapolis Colts, so that's a game they could possibly win. The Jaguars play the Titans. That's a winnable game, but the Steelers, they are playing at the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of that's going to hinge on whether Lamar Jackson plays or not, if the Steelers have a good shot to win that game. If Lamar doesn't play, then the Steelers can win. So the Bills, they just need to win to make sure that they're in. They could possibly do that against the Miami Dolphins. I think they have a decent shot to win that game, but because they need all of these other teams to win for them to somehow get eliminated, I think the Bills still have an 80% shot to get in, like I said. The Pittsburgh Steelers, though, they'll clinch a playoff berth with a win over the Ravens, plus a Bills loss to the Dolphins, or with a win, plus a Jaguars loss or tie against the Titans, or with a win, plus a Texans-Colts tie, or with a tie, plus a Jaguars loss, plus a non-tie result in the Texans-Colts, or with a Jaguars loss. Broncos win and a non-tie result in Texans-Colts. Pittsburgh can only be the number 6 seed or the number 7 seed in the playoffs, which obviously is the case. You're not going to win their division, so they're going to be a wild card spot. But this is insane. There's a lot of scenarios here to unpack. If they beat the Ravens, though, that significantly improves their chances, and that's, again, going to hinge on whether Lamar Jackson plays. Yes, Pittsburgh could beat Baltimore. With Lamar, anything's possible, but without Lamar, their chances definitely improve. Mason Rudolph has been playing very well. The Bills could lose to the Dolphins, so that scenario is not completely out of the picture either, and all these other crazy scenarios that would have to happen for them to get in. I think that the Steelers have around a 45% chance to make the playoffs. Their chances are definitely viable. They could beat the Baltimore Ravens, especially if Lamar doesn't play, and those other scenarios are not absolutely crazy. The Bills, because they have to lose to the Dolphins for the Steelers to get in as well, plus they have to go on the road to beat Baltimore, is what's keeping me from giving them a better than 50% chance to get in, but there is definitely a path there for the Steelers. Then you go to the Jaguars. They're 9-7. They'll clinch the AFC South title in the number 4 seed with a win over the Titans, which that's a very winnable game, or with a tie plus a Texans-Colts tie. The Jaguars will clinch a playoff berth in the number 7 seed with a tie, plus the Steelers loss or tie, or the Steelers loss. Denver Broncos lost to the Las Vegas Raiders, and a non-tie result in the Texans-Colts game. Since the Jaguars, all they got to do to clinch the AFC South title is get a win over the Titans, which, like I said, is a very winnable game. Even if the Jags do not have Trevor Lawrence, which is very possible with his injury, but if he plays, it would improve their chances. The Titans have not been a great team this year. I'll give the Jaguars chances of making the playoffs at around a 65% chance. It would be lower if they needed more things to go their way than just them winning, but since all they have to do do is win and they're in, then I give them a pretty good shot to get that done. But if they do blow it and lose the game, then that would really hamper their chances. Then to go to the Indianapolis Colts, they'll clinch the AFC South title in the number 4 seed with a win over the Texans, plus a Jaguars loss, or tie against the Titans, or with a tie plus a Jaguars loss. Indianapolis will clinch the playoff berth with a win, or with a tie plus the Steelers loss tie. So Indianapolis needs a little bit more to go their way. They need the Jaguars to lose to clinch the AFC South, so that's going to be kind of tough there. Plus, they're playing the Texans, which is not going to be necessarily that easy of a game for the Colts. They're at home, but the Texans have been playing very well. C.J. Stroud is healthy, and they also need the Steelers to lose to get in if the Jaguars do beat the Titans, because they're not going to win the AFC South if the Jaguars do win. The Colts have some things not necessarily going their way there, and they have a tough opponent with the Texans. I'll give the Colts a 35% chance to make the NFL playoffs. It's doable, but their chances are not as good as some of these other teams in the AFC. Then you got the Houston Texans at 9-7. They're the final team in the AFC with a shot to make the playoffs. It's nuts that all of the teams in the AFC South, the Jaguars, the Texans, and the Indianapolis Colts are all 9-7. But the Texans, they'll clinch the South and get the number 4 seed with a win over the Colts, plus a Jaguars loss or tie against the Titans. The Texans will clinch the playoff berth with a win or the tie, plus a Jaguars loss, plus a Steelers loss. The Texans' chances aren't that great either, because to get the AFC South, they have to beat the Colts, which they're going on the road. So it's basically the same scenario as the Colts. That game is going to be very vital for both teams. Plus, they need the Jaguars to lose. And for them to clinch a playoff berth, if the Jaguars win, then they need the Steelers to lose as well. So it's basically the same scenario as the Colts, but the inverse. I'll give the Texans a 35% chance, just like the Indianapolis Colts. Their chances are basically the same. They have to win, and then the other results have to happen the same way for their chances to dramatically improve. The Jaguars losing would help both teams, whoever wins the game. But if not, then they're going to need the Steelers to lose as well. So a lot's on the line for all these teams. Those are my thoughts on every single NFL playoff scenario of the teams that have not clinched a playoff berth yet. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about my percentages for every one of these scenarios, and whether you think that some of these teams have a better shot to make the playoffs than the percentages I gave, or you think that there is a worse shot that they're going to make the playoffs. It's crazy that all these teams are still up for grabs. It's going to be a wild weekend of games for all these teams and their fans, sweating it out, hoping and praying that their team can find a way to make the NFL playoffs. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm sure that these scenarios might play out in a way that nobody probably was expecting. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.